Today's meeting will take place in a webinar format. There will be a PowerPoint presentation, and after that, we will have a Q&A session. We are utilizing the Q&A function in Zoom, so at any time, if you have a question, please type it into the Q&A box. At the end of the meeting, during the Q&A session, we will verbally address as many questions as possible. And at this time, I am going to turn the meeting over to our Animal Services Manager, Kelly Maya.
Hi, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm going to be doing a brief overview of our current beekeeping ordinance and our proposed amendments. At the end of that presentation, we'll have time for questions and answers. And then at the very end, we will launch our My Fremont community survey in the Q&A section. So a little background on the beekeeping animal ordinance. July 2021, Fremont City Council requested that staff review animal ordinance related to goats, chickens, and beekeeping. September 8th, 2022, we held a community meeting relating to these ordinances. And between September 8th and September 15th, we launched our first My Fremont community survey. On September 20th, 2022, the ordinance amendments were presented to City Council, and October 4th, 2022, urban agriculture proposed amendments were adopted by City Council. City Council directed staff to seek additional public input regarding beekeeping. January 18th, 2023, we're having our community meeting for the revised ordinance. And after this meeting concludes, we will be posting a link for the next My Fremont community survey, which will run from January 18th to 25th. This survey is really important for us to get as much information from our community as possible regarding different components of the presentation that I'll be going over tonight. The final step on February 21st, I will be presenting the animal ordinance item to be reviewed at City Council. So currently, I'm going to go through each step in each component of our beekeeping ordinance as it exists, as we proposed in September, and our new concept for consideration in February 2023. So currently, residents are required to get a permit for beekeeping. In September 2022, we proposed that the permit was still required and that you must register with Alameda County per Food and Ag Code section 29040 and provide a copy of the registration to my department. The new concept for consideration in February 2023 would eliminate the permit. And you would still be required to register with Alameda County because we cannot change the Food and Agriculture Code. And all beekeeping equipment and beehives must be maintained in good condition with adequate space and management techniques to prevent overcrowding and swarming. Property square footage and distance. So currently we have a lot of restrictions on how many beehives you can have, the minimum distance from any fence line, the lot square footage you need to have, and having a permit. The proposal in September would have limited the number of beehives to 4, kept the minimum distance from the fence line at 5 feet, but eliminated the need to have a certain size property lot for beehive ownership and would have required to still have a permit. The concept for consideration in February would allow people to have an undefined number of beehives, but it would add in a 10-foot minimum distance from any property line. And the lot square footage, again, would not be a consideration and there would no longer be a permit required. The location on the property. So our current code says that and the proposed one in September said no hive may be kept or maintained within any required front or side yard setbacks. The new concept for consideration says all apiaries shall be maintained and placed in a manner that encourages bees to disperse rather than concentrate before potentially encountering neighbors or other members of the public. Implementing at least one of the following strategies to disperse bees is required. Additional measures to disperse bees may be required as determined by the Animal Services Manager. Managing the direction and angle of the bee flyaway from the entrance of the hive by properly siting and orienting the hives, and by using flyaway barriers as needed to modify the departure angle such that bees reach a height of 8 or more feet above the ground. Placing beehive boxes at least 10 feet from property lines. Placing beehives behind a barrier at least 6 feet in height consisting of a non-penetrable structure not limited to a fence, wall, building, or dense vegetation. Fences, walls, and vegetation used to meet the standard shall comply with section 18.171, and accessory buildings used to meet the standard shall comply with section 18.453 in the Fremont Municipal Code. In single-family dwelling lots, beehives shall not be located within 10 feet of any property line. Multiple dwelling balconies or patios. So I want to start with a definition of what a multiple dwelling is. Fremont Municipal Code 18.25.940. Multiple dwellings shall mean a dwelling designed to contain 3 or more dwelling units, including apartments, condominiums, attached townhouses, and similar dwellings. Currently, people who reside in these types of dwellings would not be permitted to have beehives. And the proposal for September of 2022 would say that beehives, again, are not, the current one doesn't have anything relating to multiple dwelling balconies. They're not cited at all. The proposed one in 2022 said that beehives would not be permitted on multifamily balconies or patios. So we have a new concept for consideration that in February 2023 that would allow for beehives to be placed on multiple dwelling lots with a lot of very specific considerations here relating to getting property from a getting permission from a homeowners association or a property owner, and notifying the neighbors that you are going to be become a beekeeper. The responsible beekeeper would also need to clearly stencil their name and phone number on the box's exterior. So this is a little bit wordy, but it has a lot of specific detail that really helps us articulate to people interested in beekeeping on multiple dwelling balconies and patios what is needed for the compliance. And the last step would be within the dwelling group or similar developments such as townhouses, beehives should not be placed within 10 feet of any private balcony, private yards, or common open space, except for those spaces exclusively owned or leased by the responsible beekeeper. And then in terms of care of the beehives, so the current and proposed code says that beehives must be maintained properly to prevent bees from swarming, and they must provide a source of fresh, clean water on the same lot or parcel as the hive. So, and then the additional requirements proposed in September 2022 said that beehive entrances needed to face away from the nearest property line. Beehives must either be screened so the bees must fly over a 6-foot barrier, which may be vegetative before leaving the property, or be placed at least 8 feet above the adjacent ground level, and that a beehive shall be located a minimum of 25 feet from any dwelling on any adjacent property. The new concept for consideration is that all properties on which beehives are kept must provide for adequate water sources on the property at all times of year, and must ensure that they do not become a mosquito breeding site. Adequate sources are those that provide both an amount of water necessary for the number of bees or beehives, and the method for the bees to safely access the water. And then the last part, which I know everyone's probably really excited to hear about where we're going with this, is enforcement. So the current and proposed enforcement for from September 2022 is listed here, and I can go through a lot of it, but it's just in the event that it's reasonably necessary to protect against an immediate threat or danger to the public health or safety, the animal services manager may suspend any permit summarily without a hearing for a period not to exceed 30 days. So basically, we would have been revoking a permit of a beekeeper, and the bees would have had to be relocated. The new concept for consideration says failure to keep bees in accordance with this section is a public nuisance subject to the abatement under Municipal Code Chapters 8.05, nuisance conditions of private or public property, 8.10, nuisance response, and 8.60, neighborhood preservation. So in summary, what we are proposing reduces beekeeper obligations to obtain a permit with the city, simplifies and/or eliminates beekeeping procedural language, reduces the city staff's role in enforcement and compliance. And I want to reassure you that the city will rely on the technical expertise of community partners when appropriate to help if there's any situations that arise from beekeeping. And that is the presentation. So now it's time for any questions and answers that you may have relating to any parts of the presentation.
So we had one question that came through earlier regarding where can participants access the PowerPoint presentation after this meeting. So the presentation and the meeting recording will be posted on the police department's website as well as the animal shelter's website in a few days. We do need to get the video closed captioned before it can be posted. So unfortunately, it won't be immediately this evening, but we'll try to get it up as soon as possible. And then we have another question coming in. Do the same regulations apply to commercial properties?
This is simply for residential. I'm not aware that we have beekeeping happening at commercial properties. I would have to look into that.
We have a few more questions that came in. Okay. Starting with this one. Could you repeat what the reduction of permitting means?
So thank you. That's a good question. So previously, someone who was interested in beekeeping would apply for a permit with the Animal Services Unit, and an officer would go out and meet with the person and inspect the property and make sure that the beehive would be situated in an area where it fulfilled all the obligations written in the municipal code. Now that the permit is no longer needed, there's not an additional fee, or that the permit may not be needed, there would no longer be an additional fee, and an officer would not be sent to the address to inspect before approving for the person to get become a beekeeper.
When is it anticipated that the new guidelines will take effect?
So it goes to council on February 21st. And then if they approve the changes, I don't know the exact timeline, but it would be within a few weeks. I don't know off the top of my head the exact timeline. I have to look at it on a cheat sheet that's at my desk.
What was the public concern that motivated the changes?
So we were trying to make Fremont a more friendly city for pollinators. And when in doing that, the beekeeping community became a little concerned that we could have been a little bit more friendly to beekeepers. So we went in the direction of trying to be better and to improve beekeeping. And the beekeeping community wanted us to make a little bit more improvements in that.
Kelly, do you mind if I add something to that?
No, please do, Alan.
So I'm Alan Demers. I'm with the city manager's office. So, part of the motivation here is to strike a balance between the city's ability to enforce specific technical rules and the beekeeping community's interest in having greater leeway to encourage beekeeping. So the first set of rule changes that came forward allowed for the city to be more active and specific in its enforcement, but we did hear from the beekeeping community that they were seeking additional leeway. And this is, as Kelly said, the city's attempt to meet that community, but it is a balance. There's not necessarily a right or wrong answer here, which is why we are seeking the community's input and feedback on relaxing the city's ability to rigidly enforce the rules that are listed in the code now.
Right. Next question. Who is the beekeeping community that we consulted with? For example, is it George from the Niles-Sano area?
Was it George from the what area?
Niles-Sano area?
There was four people that are very active in beekeeping in this community, and I don't have their titles in front of me, but they're very active throughout the Bay Area. So they've worked with organizations and cities throughout the Bay Area to try to work on improving pollinator access in the area. Nikki is with, hold on one second. Bee Legal, she's a Bee Legal project coordinator, Nikki Irvine, and some other people that she's connected to that are local to Fremont.
I think there's a question. Is there a time to suggest changes before the proposal to the city council in late February?
Great question. So the survey that's launching tonight pretty much mirrors the presentation. It's broken down the same way. So it's a yes or no form, and then there's an ability with each question for you to write further feedback, and we will be taking everything into consideration. So we really encourage everyone to give us your feedback and input as we continue to try to work through and come up with the best ordinance to present to council on the 21st.
So at this time, I'm just going to share the screen of the survey. Because our chat is disabled, we're unable to share the link via chat. But I wanted to mention that the link is my.fremont.gov/animal. And this is the page where we have information about the beekeeping ordinance. And if you were to scroll down, this is the survey that we'd love for you to provide your feedback. If you click on Take Survey, it will put you through the survey to provide your input. So I'm going to leave up this page so you can see the URL.
And one thing different on this community survey than from the last one we did, you no longer have to create a username and password in order to participate. There will be some demographic questions that we would love for you to answer, but you do not have to create an account in order to provide feedback.
We're looking at the questions. If I'm a beekeeper, if a beekeeper has 3 hives and made spills to prevent swarming, now there will be 6 hives. What is the maximum hives the beekeeper can have on his residence?
The way it would be proposed, the latest proposal has no limitation to the number of beehives a person can have on their property.
And based on the new guidelines for February of this year, is it correct that the beehives must be 10 feet from all property lines and 25 feet from any dwelling?
So it would be minimum distance of, 10 feet from any property line, but the 25-foot thing, let me look at that, hold on. And Matt and Alan, if you know this off the top of your head, you can chime in, but the 25-foot thing would be eliminated. I'll go back to page 12. So the new concept for consideration just has the care, but the one from September 2022 did have 25 feet from any dwelling on any adjacent property. But the proposal that we have come up with for consideration in February 2023 eliminates the 25-foot need on page 11. Does that make sense? I know it's not easy to communicate through this. Okay, thank you.
I'm not seeing any additional questions right now, so let's give everyone a few more minutes just in case someone is typing in a question. Right. How many calls to Fremont in 2022 were requested to remove swarms? And is there a program to allow beekeeper to help with capturing swarms?
Yes, so we have not had any complaints about swarms, and we've been tracking it specifically since our last city council meeting, and we have not had received any calls about any issues with bees or swarms. But the good thing that's come out of this is that we are working together with partners within the community to come up with a guidelines for us to reach out to other beekeepers to help each other help out with swarms before the city has to get involved. Obviously, if it's a public safety issue or a nuisance, we may have to get involved, but we're gonna help the beekeepers and get access to resources before the city needs to intervene.
So we have a comment, future access to the wording of the proposal would be helpful. So I think some of the wording will be available on the PowerPoint presentation that we will be sharing in the coming days.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the entire proposal written out. So everything where it says additional requirements new concept for consideration February 2023 within this PowerPoint is the entire proposal as it is right now. I didn't omit anything, and it'll be available online and as well as the presentation. Okay, looks like we're good.
Yeah. So we don't have any open questions at the moment.
Unless Matt or Alan, if you have anything you would like to add, I would really appreciate you taking the time to go to the My Fremont Community Survey and sharing your feedback with us. It was really important to all of us that we give you as much opportunity to free write as much information as you want. It's not just multiple choice. So please give us that really valuable feedback so we can come up with the best solution for the entire community. So thank you for being here tonight.
Would echo that. Thanks everyone for your participation in tonight's meeting and in this process.
Definitely. And Kelly, I just want to thank you and your team for continuing this conversation. As Ellen mentioned before, we're trying to get this right for the community and encourage urban beekeeping when we can, but also to have an ability to enforce, if required, nuisance situations. So we want to get this right for the community and really appreciate everybody continuing to engage in this discussion, and look forward to taking this to council in February. So thank you everybody for your time.
It looks like we did have one more question come in.
So, yep.
I think we may have time to answer this last question. Is there any funding to help plant pollinator plants on city property to help increase bee population?
That would be Alan. Do you want to take a stab at that one?
I am not aware of any funding dedicated to that specifically. But I would need to research, there's a lot of, all of our city parks are technically city property, all the landscaping that goes along with that. There's certainly funding to support and beautify our parks, but I don't know how much of that is like pollinator specific. So I'm sorry, I don't have an answer to that tonight.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing your responses and your feedback.
Okay. All right. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.